Hey, Steve Noble, Noble Moto. Got the 2012 Sportster up on lift today, and today we're going to put on new throttle and idle cables, or dual throttle cables, whatever you want to call it. One cable is actually the pull for when you twist the grip, and then the other cable, which is referred to as the idle cable, is actually the closing cable. It's the one that actually pulls if you roll the throttle forward. Now, your throttle return spring should have enough force to close your throttle, but you run the idle cable in case there's ever a mechanical problem. You can take that grip and force the throttle shut. That way you don't just have a sticking throttle with a revving engine. Now, there's lots of reasons you're going to need to do this. There's a giant hornet in here, so we're going to make this quick. So there's a lot of reasons you're going to need to do this. Usually 9 times out of 10, it's corrosion. Moisture gets in these cables one way or another, and you might notice that your throttle doesn't snap shut quite as fast, or it just takes a little bit more than it used to. So it will be time to replace these cables. And you can get these cables from lots of places online. I usually get them from my friends at Lowbrow Customs. So it's a pretty easy task. You don't need a lift or anything. You can do this while sitting in a lawn chair with your bike on the side stand in your driveway. It's really not that hard. It's just going to take a little bit of attention and detail when it comes to setting the throttle cables. But you can do this. I believe in you. So let's move in for a closer look. So first thing you're going to want to do is loosen up the tension on your cables. So you have these little rubber sleeves that slide over it. You should be able to take your fingertips and just whoop, slide them right on back. So what you're going to do is take 2 3/8 wrenches, or 1 3/8 wrench and an adjustable wrench, and put down there and break both of these lock nuts free. And you're going to have to spin these lock nuts probably all the way out to take all the tension off it. And if they're as cruddy as these ones are, you might have to work at it a little bit. But a little penetrating oil like PB Blaster WD-40 will help you out. In this case, we lucked out. Now we should be able to... Oh boy, this one's tight. We should be able to take this large adjuster nut right here and spin it in by hand. Oh, there it kind of turns. It's really tight. If that doesn't work, you can grab down here with a pair of pliers, but you want to be careful that you don't accidentally crush this, especially if you're reusing these throttle cables. Because if you crush this, it can pinch the cable inside, and then it's not going to work properly. This one seems to be freeing up here as I wrench it back and forth, so we're just going to go forth. Maybe. Now that the cables are loose, we're going to move up to our switch box housing. It also holds the throttle cables in place, and we're going to take that apart. Now to take the switch box off, there's one screw down here, then there's one screw up here, and this takes a T25 Torx bit. However, don't just take my word for it. If you put a T25 in there and it doesn't feel right, double check it with a different size. Maybe they changed it. Maybe somebody put a different screw in there. Who knows? Either way, carefully take that screw out, set it in a safe location, then take the top one off. Also, set that in a safe location. Then you can lift this switch housing up, and there's still some wires in there, so it's still going to be kind of attached. So to take the switch housing completely off of there, or to completely open up, or to remove the front brake lever mount, however you want to look at it, you're going to take the T25 Torx bit and loosen up your handlebar clamp screws. And from there, you should be able to kind of wiggle everything free. It won't come completely out of there, but it should be free. As you move the throttle around, you can actually see the cables down inside here. Hopefully you can see that from that shot. So if you see right here, we have this cable here, with the idle cable here, and then the throttle pull cable here. So what we're going to do, since we have a bunch of slack in the cable, we can easily slide the idle cable out of there. And there's probably a little brass ferrule thingamajigger on here don't lose that. You should get a new one with the cable, but just in case you don't, or if you drop it, hang on to that thing. But from there, you can actually pull the idle cable out the bottom. And some of them have a little spring clip that holds them in place, so you might have to give it a little bit of a tug, but it should come out of there pretty easy. If it just absolutely will not come out of there, you can take a flathead screwdriver up in there and pry it free. This one is really rusty. These throttle cables were overdue. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see this. This was kind of a hard shot to set up. So, let me grab my needle nose pliers. If you have a set of needle nose, this will be a lot easier. Not those are broken. Well, they're not spring return anymore. So, your throttle cable is attached right there. So you need to get some slack in there so you can lift the cable up and then pull it out that throttle tube right there. And it should be able to just lift up like so. Now keep in mind, doing this, you could potentially kink the cable, so this should only be done this way if you are replacing the cables. Because you want to be careful when handling these cables. If I kink this with a pair of pliers, it's never going to work right again. So don't kink the cable. But we're putting new cables on it, so it's not a big deal. So I saved the little brass ferrule. I grab the cable and pull it out of the switch box. Okay, after a little bit of a fight, I got that little ring to compress and the cable pulled out of there. So you should just be able to pull it right out of there. There is a little spring clip right on here. I will zoom in on that. So that little spring clip pops out once it gets up in there and it holds it in place. And in theory, you should be able to just take that and pull it back down, and that spring clip should snap in and it should come out of there. However, what happens is you get a bunch of crud in there and then the spring clip won't get out of there. So what I end up doing, just for future reference for anyone who has this problem, I end up grabbing the tip of this with a pair of vice grips, and I was able to pull it down. Now that didn't get it down all the way. From there, I had to get in there above this lip with a flathead screwdriver, twist it, and that forced that whole cylinder here to pop down out of there. I did scratch up the bottom of the switch block doing it. However, I didn't cause any mechanical damage, so a black marker touch-up paint thing will fix that right up. But don't be alarmed if that is a struggle you face. Either way, cables are now disconnected. Now, you can also carefully open up the switch box, slide the throttle tube right on out of there. One more thing, when you do pull that cable out, you want to be careful not to just pull on the switch housing heavily, or you want to support the switch housing, because otherwise you'll be pulling on the wires that actually go into all these switches, and if you damage those, you're going to run into a bunch of electrical problems. So if you do have to pull on that cable, make sure you hold this switch housing up in place with your hand as you work that throttle cable till it comes out of there. Now that you have the throttle cable off, now's a good time to check out the condition of your handlebars right here. And this one had a black powder coat or paint on it. And as you can see right here, it got some, well, first it wore the powder coat and paint off from my wife riding this thing like a demon. And then you can see where it got some moisture in there and it started to corrode stuff over. So what I'm going to do while I'm in here is I'm going to take some sandpaper. I'm going to move the switch to the side, but I'm going to take some sandpaper and sand all the rest of this old paint and corrosion off of here so the new throttle tube works nice and freely. Next, now we're going to remove the air filter cover. This takes a 3/16 Allen wrench, and we're going to lefty-loosey these two bolts right on out of here. Whoop. Then we're going to take this outer housing, should pull right off of there. Now's an excellent time to give your air filter an inspection. Everything looks good on this one. There's no excessive dirt or debris or anything. Nothing's living inside the air box, which is good, and you'd be surprised how often that happens. Next, you're going to take your T25 Torx bit and pull these 3 screws out. Then you should be able to take your air filter and just boop, boop, pop it right off of there. Also, it's a good time to check your air filter. Everything looks pretty good. Still got some life left in it. Now you can take a 9/16 wrench and take the 2 breather bolts out. Make sure those, give them a look through. There should be a hole that goes all the way through these things. Hold on with the light, make sure they're nice and clean and free. Clean and open, I should say. Take your air filter box, pull. Doo-doo. This is your throttle body. These are your throttle cables right here. If you pull one, it should open and close the throttle there. The other one's your idle cable. Now at this point, you could probably do it with this bracket on here. However, it's going to be kind of hard to see, and it'll be kind of hard to get my hands and the camera in there. So we're going to take this bracket off. That is also a 3/16 Allen screw, or Allen wrench. Now we'll set that down. Now before we let's go up here with the light, the camera. See right here? See right here? These are zip ties that are holding the throttle cables in place. It seems all well and cool. However, here's a problem. If you cut these zip ties, the throttle cables will come free, but getting zip ties back into this plastic sheath are going to be a giant, giant pain. You'll have to pull the tank off and do that. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try and snake the cables through there. Fingers crossed. So first we're going to grab this front cable here, which is the idle cable. Oh wait, was that the idle cable or the pull cable? Yes, that was the idle cable. And there's a slot right here on the side. Let's move that camera over a little bit more. So there's a slot right here on the side, and that's where the cable should go through. So it should... Oh, there's a little spring down in there. Make sure you lift that little spring out, and then you should be able to slide the cable out. Then you can rock it out straight and slide the barrel right on out of there, just like that. Now, you can take your idle cable and pull it all the way out of here. Now next, we're going to pull the throttle cable off in the same way. Okay, well, I guess this one we're going to unhook the cable from the throttle here first. Unhook that little barrel there. Figure out where our nail nose pliers went that we just had in our hand. Slide that cable right up out of there. Now we should hopefully be able to lift that up. And it'll lift just out of there, just like so. Then you can slide that cable up out of there. Here's an obnoxious surprise. I have to undo the tank mount to get the cables off. That's stupid. But it is what it is. So, we're going to take a 1/4-inch Allen wrench here. And a 1/2-inch wrench onto the other side. I'm going to break the nut free on the other side. So I don't actually have to take the bolt all the way out. You just need to get this tab to flex out a little bit, and then the cable comes off of there. So not a huge deal, still stupid. Now you can take your new throttle cables and slide them into this groove here, probably one at a time. Slide them underneath the zip ties, if you are so lucky as to be able to reuse those zip ties. And pull it all the way down out there. There we are. Slide that one down in there. So first thing we're going to do is install the throttle cable, or the pull cable. And we're going to feed that back in there through that little groove. Then we're going to bring this lug here around and slide it in the notch, and then wrap it up and around. And you can go up to the other end of the cable and pull the slack out of it and just pull it tight. Next is the idle cable. So we're going to pull the slack out. And remember, this spring needs to go up here above the mount. So spring's in there, cable goes through the slot. Now pull the excess cable there, the excess sheathing, and then you can again take this lug, put it through the hole, and roll it up. Don't kink the cable, make sure the cable rolls free. There we are. And again, you can grab the excess on the other end of the cable, give it a pull, give that one a pull. If you want, you should be able to give it a pull and the throttle should work. Now I'm going to hook up the other end to make sure it operates properly before I put the air filter back on. So I wire wheeled the handlebars off and got the rest of the flaky powder coat off of there. Based upon how it came off, it was definitely powder coat. So now we're going to bolt the handlebars back on there as soon as I figure out where the clamp went. There it is. So we're just going to put this clamp back on here loosely. Oh, wait a minute. Don't do that yet. So we're going to hold the handlebar, the brake clamp up in there. Then we're going to take the switch box. Hang on. I got this all tangled up here. Give me a second. So there's a notch or a dimple on the bottom of the handlebars, and you need your wires to run through there if you're running external wires. So we're going to put the switch block up in place. A switch box, block, whatever. Then we're going to put the handlebars up in place. Put the wires up into the dimple on the bottom of the handlebars. Make sure we don't pinch any of the wires as we do this. Then we can take this half moon clamp, handlebar clamp, whatever you want to call it. Get that started in there. Once the bottom one's snugged up, snug up the top one. Don't tighten it up yet, because you're going to move these probably. So we're just going to run in until it's snug, back it off a wee little bit. Whoop, right there. Just enough that it all sits in place. Because the next step will be to reinstall the throttle cables in here and then reinstall the throttle tube. So, let's take your rubber boot there. Lip goes forward, I think. Slide that over top your adjuster there, and it will eventually stay right there. We're going to take it and slide it all the way down the cable now. Then we're going to slide the throttle cable up into the front spot right there. Then we're going to take the new little ferrule, and these ones happen to be silver, but we're going to slide that over top the ball. This is probably going to annoy you. Alright, so once you slide the cable, let's try to do this so you can see it. Once you slide the cable through this little groove there, or the sleeve, you can then slide it up onto the ball. Then you can rotate it around, move your camera. This is going to be kind of a trick here to do this and keep the shot. So we're going to slide it into the throttle tube there. It's not as hard as it appears to be, but trying to keep your hands out in front of the camera as you do it and get it in there is not the easiest task. But once it's in there, so it goes in the back, cable lays down the groove, slides into your switch box like that. At this point, you should be able to operate your throttle, which it does. Now we're going to slide the rubber boot over top the idle cable. Slide the rubber boot all the way down the cable there. And again, so what we're doing when we're installing this barrel here, so there is the big hole there that the ball goes into, and there's the slot. So we're just sliding on like that. However, you have to do this after the cable is up inside the switch box. Why you can't do it the other way, I don't know, but it doesn't quite fit. And I didn't design these things, I just fix them. There, it goes on there like that. And again, slide that barrel in through the back. Come on. Slide that barrel in through the back of the grip like so. Cable up, down through, just like that. After you do it about 20 times, you'll get pretty good at it. Next, make sure your cables are laying in the groove as they should. Now, nothing's adjusted, so you're going to have a bunch of slop. But you should be able to kind of hold the switch box in place, and that should operate your throttle. So, before we adjust the cables, we're going to get our switch box fully in place here, lock it all down with the screws, make sure your front brake lights switch and all the little notches and everything. Make sure everything's all nice and lined back up. Then reinstall those 2 screws that you took out of there, that you put in a safe location that you now have to find. They say to tighten these down evenly, which you should. However, I always close up the front one first. That way this little gap here on the front is nice and closed. That way there's less chance of rainwater and stuff getting in there when you ride in the rain. Make sure everything's all the way up and on where it should be. Then tighten that one up. Then tighten the lower one up. Then torque them to spec. Before you torque them, actually, give it a twist again. Still should work. Should be loose, but still should work. Now we're going to tighten up our handlebar clamp. Again, check the grip. All works well and good there. Now, to adjust your throttle cables. So remember, your front cable is your throttle cable. We've got a ton of slop in there. So we're going to loosen this jam nut up on here. And then we're going to start spinning the big sleeve out. And that's making the outer sleeving or sheaving, whatever, of the cable stretch out, which is taking up the slop. We're just doing this with a really light touch. And all of a sudden, we're going to feel some resistance. We feel a little bit of resistance. Back it off 1 full turn. Check your throttle. Everything moves nice and free. There's still a decent amount of slop in there. So we're going to adjust it a little bit more. Just a little bit more. You want to have a wee little bit of play in here, but not a lot. Seems to be pretty good. Now, we're going to spin the jam nut up there just enough to hold it all in place. Don't tighten it up yet. Now, the idle cable, all that's really designed to do is to be a safety catch. So if you have to force that throttle shut, that's where the idle cable comes in. So all we're really trying to do right now is take up that slack. So we're just going to take the idle cable and we're going to thread on out, again, until we feel a little bit of resistance there. There's some resistance. Now you notice it doesn't really spring back to quite where it was. So we're going to back that off a little bit. Jiggle your cables around too. Make sure they aren't bound up somewhere, because that would be a weird problem to chase. Maybe back your throttle off a wee little bit. There we are. How much slop do we have? That's pretty tight. I want a little bit more slop in there than that. So in this case, I'm actually going to back the throttle off a little bit. There. Now there's a wee little bit of... You do it by feel. It should snap back. You should not have to force this back at all. Once that feels good, run both jam nuts in there. Take your 10mm wrenches. Snug them up. Just like that. Now do it to the top one. Snug it up. Just like that. Give it all inspection. Make sure everything is like tight and where it should be. Make sure this weird throttle thing is backed out. You don't want that screwing with you. Again, give it a couple snaps. Make sure this thing works right. This is your throttle. Don't screw around here. It's not good enough. Make sure it is good. You want to make sure that thing slaps back shut on its own as soon as you let it go. Which this one does. So, last but not least, you can take this rubber boot thingamajigger here and slide up over top. I know some people like the chrome adjuster nut, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sliding over the top because my wife travels on this bike, and I want to give as much rain protection as I possibly can. Not gonna lie, if it was a chopper, I wouldn't put those rubber things on there. Either way. So we slide those back up in place. Again, check everything. How's it look? How's it work? Everything works good. Next, reinstall this support bracket. This takes a 3/16 Allen wrench to run this in until it's tight. Important thing is, make sure it lines up. Take your crud off of there. Make sure it lines up with the holes in the cylinder head. Make sure it lines up real well, because you can't get to this bracket once the air filter box is on there. Check to make sure your rubber air box, or make sure your air box gasket is in good shape right back there. And we're going to line that up, and it should sit in place. And we should be able to take our 2 breather bolts. Again, make sure these are free. And get both of them started in there. Now we're just going to run these in by hand. We're not going to tighten them up yet. Also, there's a little O-ring right here. Make sure that O-ring is still there and in good shape on both of those. Now we're going to look inside these 3 holes, make sure everything lines up, which it does. And if it does, we are then able to tighten up the air box. And torque that spec. Now you can take your air filter with the 3 screws, put it in place. These 2 sleeves here have to go over top the breathers there. So you're going to look down from the top and line it all up. Should be pretty easy. Don't overthink it. Then take your T25 Torx bit and run all these in until they're snug. You don't want to tighten any of them up yet until they're all in and almost all the way there. Otherwise it will go crooked or it'll go cockeyed or something. Once they're in there all the way, you can go around and torque all of them to spec. Then you can take your air filter cover here. Start one bolt in. Start the other bolt in. Run both of these in until they stop lightly. Make sure your gasket on top is where it should be and not like half falling in there like this one is. So we're going to make sure the gasket's in good shape there and in place. There we go. Haha! Much better. Give the visual all the way around. Make sure your gasket is good and in place. And torque both of those to spec. All right.